everyone, my name is Garrett and I am the founder of Ambition in Motion, and I'm so excited, I'm so grateful to have you here for our first workshop of the spring season. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that you've decided to invest in yourself to build a mentoring relationship with someone from your organization so then you can help amplify your own career prospects and opportunities to really help take your career to the next level. I'm really excited for you and what you're going to accomplish over these next 4 months. So during this video, I just wanted to give you an overview of what to expect for the program and how to prep for this upcoming workshop. Now, this workshop's title is called Transitioning into a Managerial Role. So maybe you're in your career and maybe you're about to start entering into a managerial role, or maybe you've been a manager for a while, or maybe you're not a manager quite yet, but you will be. This workshop will be extremely insightful for you. You are going to learn a ton about management and how to properly manage somebody and how to not properly manage somebody. If you have any questions throughout this workshop, please post them in the comments section. That we will work towards answering all questions you've got as quickly as we can during the workshop. And we'll be especially checking them within the first 24 hours of this video going live. So if you post those questions right away, we will work on answering them. If you post them like a week later, it might take us a little while to get back to them, but we will answer them. I promise that. I'm very excited for you to get started. So I wanted to give you first an idea of the timeline of the program. Tonight is the first workshop. So pumped about it. All of our workshops are, by the way, going to start at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, and any time in between if you're somewhere in between in the United States. Our goal is that you have at least 3 meetings with your mentor over the course of the spring, but ideally you meet more. Ideally you meet more often than that. Now, we will introduce you to your mentor. We actually introduced you to your mentor earlier today. But if you think to yourself, oh, I should wait, or I should wait for this to happen, or I should wait for that to happen, don't. Get on it right away. Build that relationship. I strongly encourage that, because the longer you wait, the more time you're putting off from building a great mentor relationship, and the more time you're putting off from actually really seeing the results and being able to apply what we're teaching in these workshops into your life. So have multiple areas of support. Take advantage of your mentor, start building that relationship. Now, those 4 workshops are the first ones on transitioning into a managerial role. The second one is determining when is the right time to pursue additional education, or if it's the right time to pursue additional education. The third workshop is determining when is the right time to switch jobs. And the final workshop is on how to handle conflict in the workplace. So they're really relevant topics, and I think that you're going to really enjoy these workshops and the guest speakers that we brought in for you to learn from during these workshops. We will send you a post-program assessment to get your feedback. So this workshop is going to be roughly an hour long, and we're going to cover a lot of topics on how to transition into a managerial role. And so for you, my focus is on how can you go about making the most out of this. Really, the best way to go about making the most out of these workshops is to interact with us. When I ask a question to you, the audience viewing this, answer it. Post your answer in the comment section. If you've got any questions about anything at all for either myself or our guests, post it in the comment sections. We will get to it. That helps us know that you are there, because here's the thing. I would rather you post your questions in the comment section, because if you got this question, I guarantee you somebody else in the audience does as well. So if we were to answer questions on an individual private basis, we're not really answering everybody's questions. But if you post your questions in the comment section, we can share this with everybody so then they can get their answers just like you got your answer. This program doesn't guarantee you a promotion or a new job. Really, the key is this program's for professionals who want to take their career to the next level. Like, we don't hand things out on a silver platter. Now, by the way, do these types of opportunities happen for the professionals that use this program? Absolutely. But you got to be open to it. You got to be willing to put your time in to go ahead and make the most out of this experience. If you're thinking to yourself, oh, I'm going to come in negatively or skeptically, you're going to get negative and skeptical results. I mean, it's the law of attraction. If you come in with a negative mindset, you're going to manifest a negative mindset. If you come in with a positive mindset, you're going to manifest a positive mindset. It's all about how you view this system, this workshop, this opportunity. So come in with the right idea, with the right mindset, and you can make the most out of this experience. I promise that. So I just want to set the expectation properly. This is a program that does not hand out things on a silver platter. If you work for them, you can absolutely take your career to the next level, but it's about applying them. It's about actively meeting with your mentor. It's about actively networking and actually doing what you can to make the most out of this experience. Ask questions, interact, take advantage of everything we've got for you, and you will get the opportunities you desire. I mean, that's what this program's here for. If you think like, oh, I'm going to do the bare bones minimum, I'm just going to kind of have just 3 phone calls and, we'll keep them at the minimum length of time, and I'm just going to attend the workshop, not take any notes, not really make any comments, not really talk to anybody about what I'm learning. you're gonna get those types of outcomes. That's pretty much it. So I really want to encourage you to make the most out of this program. Take advantage of it. Ask questions, participate, and interact. Respond. Treat this program as fuel. Treat this program as fuel to help you get to where you want to be. If you're already burning and going strong, going hard, this program can help you get into the next level and accelerate. If you're barely burning a fire, barely burning an ember, and you really want to rekindle that and get yourself up, take advantage of it. Jump in. But if you think to yourself, you know what, I'm barely burning this ember. I'm not really trying to burn this ember. Really, there's nothing there. The fuel can only do so much for you. So the point I'm making is come in with an open mind and a willingness to work hard, and you can achieve what you want. I mean, have professionals use this program to gain a managerial role or negotiate a raise or build deep bonds with their colleagues or expand their networks. Absolutely. But did those outcomes come handed on a silver platter? No, they didn't. It's about how you can apply what you're learning in this workshop to make the most out of this experience. So I want to share with you a little bit about my background, because I think that helps give some context as to who I am, what we're teaching, what we've learned, and why this information is relevant. So for me, I personally needed mentors in my life. And this might sound crazy, but from age 15 to age 19, I was a drug dealer. At the end of my freshman year at Indiana University, I got arrested in an undercover operation by the Indiana University Police Department, and I got 5 felony distribution charges. I was expelled from school, and I had no idea really what I was going to do with my life. It hit my life like a brick wall. I mean, up to that point in time in life, I thought success was you go to school, you get good grades, you get a job, and then you just kind of find yourself, like as if it's puberty, it just comes and hits you. And nobody that I had ever known that I ever thought was successful ever was a drug dealer. So I either had to accepting a failure or redefine my definition of success. So I chose the latter. And it was a great decision for me. Kind of like back to the whole law of attraction thing. I opened my mind to what positively could happen from this situation as opposed to negatively. So I enrolled in a program in St. George, Utah after I got in trouble. And they exposed me to the power of mentorship, both on a personal level and a professional level. On a personal level, they were huge. I mean, they helped me come to grips with how it affected my family, my friends, my university, my country. I really didn't think that what I had done really would impact anybody or that anybody would care. And that was so wrong. And I really don't ever want to discount the power of personal mentors, because personal mentors can really help you make some serious just strides and have some serious growth in your life, because ultimately those personal mentors can help see you for you. And don't get me wrong, the professional mentors are amazing as well. And by the way, we can mix those two. They can both be personal and professional mentors. But I really want to stress the importance of being vulnerable in a mentoring relationship, just like I've been vulnerable with you right now sharing my story, because I know that when you're vulnerable, you're much more likely to be attractive in that relationship. You're much more likely to build trust. I mean, shoot, you can't even build trust without vulnerability. You have to have vulnerability. So when it comes to building a mentor relationship, I hope me sharing my story with you has helped inspire you to be vulnerable with your mentor and in your mentoring relationship. Just to kind of finish out my story in terms of how I actually got here from being a drug dealer who moved to St. George, Utah. About a month after living in Utah, I flew back to Chicago for the weekend to let my family know my life's getting on track. On that flight, I'm sitting next to a guy. I took a keen interest in who he is. I asked him questions, I took down notes, shared with him a little bit about me, but really I was focused on who he was and asking him questions and really learning about what he had to say, because people love to talk about themselves. I was learning that through a book I was reading called Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And by the time we landed, he said, oh, by the way, I'm the director of ground equipment for SkyWest Airlines. And he offered me an internship doing financial analysis on the spot. Didn't care about my background. He decided to take me under his wing and give me an opportunity, and that was so crucial. That was amazing. He didn't care that I might be going to prison sometime in the future. He didn't care really what my future looked like. He cared about me, and he wanted to give me a chance, and that was so crucial. It helped me really take some serious strides in my life and my career. About a year after living in Utah, I actually got very lucky. While I was in Utah, I started a nonprofit to help young men and women who had made poor choices with drugs and alcohol and help them get mentors too, just like I had gotten mentored by that guy at SkyWest Airlines. And the court system saw that. They ended up dropping my felonies to a misdemeanor conviction. Indiana University had decided to re-enroll me, and I started Ambition in Motion with the idea of how can I help people get connected with their careers. I mean, ultimately for me, my vision is a world where the vast majority of people, not a couple people, but the vast majority of people are excited to go to work, When they're there, their expectations meet reality, and when they come home, they feel fulfilled. I'm here to try to help you achieve that. That's all I do, is to help serve you, to get you to where you want to be in your career. Because the more satisfied you are with your career, the better of a society we live in, and the more happy society is, the better everybody's lives are. I don't know. That's just my way of trying to make an impact on the world. And, you know, if you're going through this right now as a professional and you're thinking to yourself, like, what is my impact on the world? You know, it could be anything. But I think if you're consciously aware of that and think to yourself, I want to make an impact on the world, that's a great starting point. So the point is, be vulnerable and think about your impact, especially as it pertains to your story. Now, I want to talk about 3 keys to success for this program. The 3 keys to success for this program are honing your strategy, your story, and your state. Now, I said those in reverse order of importance. Your state is number 1. Physically, what is your state? Like your physiological state. Are you like amped up? Are you ready? Are you good to go? Are you in such a good mood that you're going to take on the world? Or are you stressed out, hunched over your computer, got bad posture, not feeling great? I mean, your first impression is everything. And when you're going into your mentor meeting, or a meeting with anybody for that matter, and you're coming in with some bad body language, I can promise you, you are not going to have a good first impression, and that will kill that relationship. It is very difficult to overcome a bad first impression. So, fortunately, there are some things that you can do to help you get yourself into a positive state. And they take like 30 seconds because your emotions drive your emotions. Now, you might have had the worst day in the world. And you might be thinking to yourself like, oh man, I got to meet with my mentor right now. I don't know how I can do this. Here's something you can do to get yourself into a positive state. There's a lot of things you can do. You can do a power pose. You can fake smile for 30 seconds. You could fake laugh for 30 seconds. But what I like to do is I like to shake it out, and I like to dance it out, and I like to scream at the top of my lungs. So what I want you to do right now while you're watching this video, and I know it might sound crazy, you might be in your house, you might be in your office, you might be at work, I don't really care. Stand up, shake it out, shimmy it loose. Stand out. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. Just go, yeah, just let it loose, let it out, let it go. And the reason why I'm telling you to do this is because you are releasing endorphins to your brain, getting blood flowing to your brain. What this does is it gets you into a positive mood. It takes you from wherever you're at and puts you at a 10. It gets you ready to go. And your physical body, your physiology, your body is saying, thank you, I'm ready for this. I'm ready to take on the world. Your state is crucial. So when it comes to a mentor meeting, get your state right. You're going to give a positive first impression if you get your state right. If you're screaming at work, good for you. Amazing. I'm proud of you. That's awesome. You know, people might think of you and look at you like a weirdo, but that's okay because this is not a coolness contest. This is about you making strides in your career and getting a positive first impression with your mentor and with anybody that you want to meet. Now, the second key is your story. Now, what's a story that you tell yourself? Do you tell yourself a story for why you won't be successful or for why you will be successful? I mean, your story could be, oh, well, you know, I'm an introvert, so I couldn't possibly be good at networking or putting myself out there or trying to get a raise or try to be a manager because, you know, I'm just an introvert. Or maybe you think to yourself, like, I'm an extrovert. I'm crazy around people. I can't even handle it. I'm a word vomiter. I just can't even contain myself around other people. I couldn't possibly be good at networking or in a managerial position. If you tell yourself a story for why you will not be successful, you will not be successful. But if you tell yourself a story for why you can be successful, you can manifest that outcome. If you tell yourself a story, if you literally play in your mind how a situation could go the most positive way it could possibly go, you will get yourself to where you want to be. So I want to ask you right now, and I would love if you could post in the comment section, what is a story that you tell yourself for why you will be successful? Where do you want to go? What do you want to achieve? How are you going to do that? Lay out your story of where you're going. It could be the next 3 months. It could be the next year. I don't really care. But put it out there for how you're going to be successful. Share it with the world. Share it with your community here because what that does is it empowers other people to be vulnerable and share their story as well. I'd love if you could share your story of where you want to go in the comment section. Now, the last key is your strategy. So what is the strategy that you're going to do to help you get to where you want to be? Now, this workshop is all about how to transition into a managerial role. So the strategy is going to be all about how can you go about becoming a better manager. Now, take the skills that we're teaching in this workshop with our guest speaker. Take these skills and apply them. One of the things that I love to do when it comes to strategy is to set up a routine. So what is something that you can do on a regular basis to help you reinforce this skill that you're learning in this workshop? Because if you're just here in this workshop and you're just watching this video and maybe you're taking notes, like that might stick, But if you actually teach it to somebody else, that is definitely going to stick. Exponentially, you are much more likely to remember the information that you're taught if you teach it to somebody else. So what I want you to do when it comes to strategies, I want you to take what you're learning during this workshop and I want you to apply it and teach it to somebody else. This could be a friend, it could be a stranger, I don't really care. But teach something that you learned that you thought was impactful and powerful to you. I love if you could do that, because if you can, you're going to reinforce this information, and this program, this workshop, this whole experience is going to be so much more powerful to you because you are reinforcing what you are learning. So the way that you can practice, find an accountability partner, teach them the skills that you are learning, something that you learned, and it could be anything. Like whatever nugget of wisdom that you heard from me or from our guest, teach that to somebody else. That will help you reinforce it. Now, like I said, if you've got any questions about anything that I mentioned or anything our guest mentions, please post it in the comment section. We will do our best to answer those within 24 hours of you posting them, especially if you post them within 24 hours of this video airing. If you post after that, we might be a little bit delayed on that, but post them within 24 hours. We will get to answering them. Thank you all for being here. I'm really excited for you to embark on your mentor relationship. And in this mentor program, I'm really excited to get started with our guest speaker. Hey everybody, I'm so excited for our workshop this evening. We're here to talk about how to transition into a managerial role. Now, transitioning into a managerial role is not easy, and for a lot of companies, there's not a lot of training for that. Hey, I was a great individual contributor, now I'm a manager. What's the next step? Like, you're kind of expected to figure it out on your own, and it's not always the best of circumstances in terms of the prep work with that. But we've got an incredible speaker here. We've got Aaron Grady. Aaron is the HR and IT manager for a really cool tech startup in Indy called Bloomerang, and we're here to talk about learning about his experience of transitioning from an individual contributor to being a manager, and really some of the things that he's learned on the way of getting to this role that he's at, some of the suggestions he's got for anybody else who's going through or about to go through this exact same circumstance. So Aaron, thanks for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
So Aaron, I'd love to just kind of, I guess, chat. I'd love to learn about your story, about how kind of you transitioned into this managerial role for yourself and kind of how this has worked for you. And really, I'd love to learn specifically why sometimes can it be really difficult to why can it sometimes be difficult to transition into that manager role?
Yeah, for sure. So for a long time I worked just in IT, kind of as an individual contributor, and then kind of decided that I wanted to, look into management a little bit more. And so I got my MBA part-time while I was working full-time. And so that definitely helped. But a lot of becoming an HR manager was being in the right place at the right time. I mean, there's certainly a little bit of luck involved. There's definitely some networking with people that I met in school. And then a lot of it was just kind of me pushing, so just, trying to make that path for myself. I saw an opportunity that we didn't have, an HR person at our company, and I latched onto that, and worked on getting that role for 6 months to a year, and I just kept working at it. I took on little by little, and then was able to make a case for the position for myself.
Did you know that that's what you wanted to do when you first set out for the role? Did you know that you wanted to be the HR manager, or were you just open to taking on more projects? Did people come to you and say, hey, Aaron, could you do this? Or hey, Aaron, could you do that? Or were you saying like, hey, I think there's more that we can do here. Let me step up and take it on.
Yeah, good question. A little bit of both. I would say that I knew that I wanted to do something different than what I was doing. And I had done a little bit of recruiting work, and I just realized, I guess, as I was doing it, that I liked it more than I thought that I would. I saw that there was an opportunity, and then I was just open to it. Really, I never intended to be an HR manager long term. I just saw that was a good opportunity. I felt like I was pretty good at it, at least some of the aspects of it. And so those things all kind of came together at the right time in the right way.
That's cool. I love that, and I think that's the case for so many people. I mean, careers are non-linear. It's not like a direct path. Like, hey, first I'm on this, then I'm on that, and then I'm on this, and you just keep going up this very specific, clear line. In reality, it's like, all over the place. You don't really know where the heck you're going to end up, and I think that's pretty normal. And I think that's awesome. I love learning your story about that, and I think that's something that's really insightful, because I think it's a great testament to anybody who's maybe in this position where they'd like to potentially be a manager. It's not necessarily going to happen just by continually doing the same thing you do every day. You're going to have to put yourself in the position of your current manager or the people leading your company and saying, hey, it looks like there are some things that I can do to step up, to take on some things and off of other people's plates, or do things that, could potentially put out a fire. I'd be happy to take it on, and then boom, just jump right in and do it. So I think I love, I guess, that go-getter attitude, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Do you have any stories of good management versus bad management, or just any times that you said, hey, I had a really great manager, and this is what he or she did, and maybe I had a really bad manager, and this is what he or she did, and how can we avoid the bad and be more like the good?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, I guess we'll just do the bad one first and then end on the good one. But I mean, I think that the toughest thing can be being consistent, and probably the worst management experience I had was someone that just didn't back up their team. I think that is. There are a lot of things potentially that can go wrong, but the biggest one to me about being a manager is, being a leader for your team and standing up for your team when it comes to other managers or other employees or whatever. You need to handle issues that you have internally with your team, but you're united as a team facing, the rest of the company. I think that and not doing that can really hurt your employees' morale. And no matter how good they are, that they just won't trust you.
So interesting. So what was happening, if I'm hearing you right, is you had a manager that maybe he or she, maybe when you proposed an idea to them, they were like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's bring it to somebody else. And then maybe he or she would bring it to somebody else, maybe partially champion it, but if it ever was met with any resistance, he or she maybe abandoned it and was like, oh, it was all Aaron's idea, throw the blame on him. That was, it wasn't my fault. I just was passing the message along. Is that kind of like the scenario that was playing out?
Yeah, definitely. That's that's pretty much exactly it. And there are other situations similar to that where someone would just bring a complaint to, our department about me or like any other person in the department, and rather than saying like, okay, well, let me check into that, and coming to us and trying to figure out what's wrong, they would just immediately like bring that complaint to us rather than protecting us and trying to help us. So that's something that can definitely kind of shake the relationship for sure.
Yeah, it almost sounded like, even in that scenario, it was like the immediate belief that some outside person could immediately sway somebody that's on your team and your belief in that person on your team, which I would imagine would be frustrating. So tell me a story of good management.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say, I mean, I have great management now, but one specific example I can think of was kind of early in my career when I first started working, actually after college. I had a boss who was just like my direct supervisor, and he would always push me to be a little bit better and to pay a little bit more attention to detail, because I was a little bit of a space case when I first came out of college, to be honest. And he would always push me to do better. And whenever I didn't do something, he would explain to me exactly what went wrong, and he wouldn't be upset with me. Just use it as an opportunity to learn. Like what can we learn from what went wrong here? And that's actually how my current manager works as well. It's always any mistake is just an opportunity to learn something and to grow from. And I think that that is, one of the most important pieces of management for sure.
Almost like empowering you to understand where the mistake was and allowing you to grow from it, as opposed to it being like, I don't know, like a carrot and the stick type of situation. It's like if you say, hey, you made this mistake, like here's the stick. Instead, you having a manager that can say, hey, I'm believing in you, and I believe that you can accomplish this, and this is maybe an area where I maybe thought you could have done a little bit better, been a little bit more specific. This is how you can overcome it, and I look forward to seeing what you do on your next try.
Yep, that's exactly it. That's just looking at basically everything as an opportunity for growth, as opposed to, being punitive.
Love that. So let's talk about feedback. How do you give feedback?
Yeah, for sure. I think the most important aspect of giving feedback is being positive, and explaining how someone can do something better, and getting their buy-in and getting them to understand whether when something can be corrected, or there's an opportunity, and then frequency I think is really important of feedback. Not waiting until there's nothing that can be done, or until the relationship is irreparable or anything like that.
What if I'm in a really stressful situation? I think, like, obviously in this conversation, it's easy to say like, hey, like feedback should be positive. Or like when things are like not done correctly, be patient with people. But what if as a manager, when you're in a really stressful situation, you really need this thing to get done, you're relying on somebody else to get this thing done, and they don't get it done, which has like a domino effect onto your work. How do you handle that sort of situation? How do you make sure that maybe those emotions you're feeling about the stress that you're facing don't come onto this other person that's directly reporting to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think number one, sticking to the facts is pretty important. Don't let your emotions or what you think about why the person did something or why they didn't do something, don't let any of that in the moment come in and affect the way that you talk to them or the way that you coach them. I think just very much sticking to specific facts or behaviors or acts or whatever it is, and letting them know these are the things that we need to change. And I know that you can do it, and encouraging them, that you believe in them, and that's why you've given this project to them, and that these are the specific items that they need to do to correct that or to fix it. I think is really important, and not letting bias or emotion come in too much.
I think that makes sense. I mean, like you don't want to reprimand somebody like you didn't get your stuff done because you're lazy. But it's
Right.
a massive generalization. If you tell someone that you're lazy, or if you tell yourself that you think someone else is lazy, even if it's not to their face, you're not setting yourself up for success. So I think that's really a really good point to bring up, because you don't really know what's going on with their world and how they're being affected by any other thing going on in their life, which I think makes a lot of sense. Can non-specific feedback be damaging?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it definitely can. I mean, general advice is good sometimes, but um, if you want somebody to change something, you need to tell them exactly what it is that they need to change. And depending upon your role, maybe it's up to them, how they change it, as opposed to um, you telling them exactly what they need to do, as long as you have the same goal and they understand the goal. But I think that that's extremely important, is to tell people exactly what you need from them and what they need to do differently. Otherwise they're probably just stabbing in the dark, and you need to talk to them and tell them that specific thing that you need, and then confirm with them that they understand what you're saying to them as well, so that you're both on the same page.
Yeah, no, that's really cool, and that makes a lot of sense. I can think of well, one, it makes me think of Kim Scott, the woman who wrote the book Radical Candor, and one of the things she talks about is this idea of there was a time that she was working with a group of people, and she saw a manager at an award ceremony get an award for something that he did, and he said, "Hey, I want to give a shout out to XYZ department for getting this task done." But it was a huge department, a department of, like, let's say 15, 20 people. In reality, only 5 people worked on the project. So by not specifically saying, those 5 specific people's name, but giving the entire credit to the whole department, they felt a little kind of slighted, the specific people who worked on it, when in reality, it wasn't all 20 people in the department, it was just 5 people. And then on the flip side, for improvement, I love what you're talking about, the sense that it needs to be specific, because if all you're saying is, hey, we need to be better, we just need to be better, if all you're saying is that, you're not putting your people in the position to succeed. Now, I love what you said about sharing with them the goal, not necessarily the way about how to achieve that goal. And that's something I think is fascinating, because your people can think of potentially a more innovative way to come about achieving that goal than maybe what you could come up with. Maybe because they're in the trenches, they know better than you could. So maybe you say, hey, our goal is to accomplish this specific outcome. I would assume that we would be able to get it by this outcome. But if you've got an alternative solution, we're open to doing that. As long as the goal gets hit, I don't really care how you go about achieving it. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Definitely like a management by objective type approach. I think in most cases, at least like in a professional world, is going to be the most effective, especially if, like you're saying, those people, they have the people doing the job every day are the ones who have the experience and the insight into how to reach that goal best, or at least they can help for sure.
Yeah. Now let's talk about immediate feedback. I think that there's like a key there between like specific feedback and then like immediate feedback. How important is it to give immediate feedback after you've noticed something is done maybe incorrectly?
Yeah, I think definitely if you give immediate feedback, you'll save yourself a lot of headaches, like in the future, for sure. Like things, if you let something, continue to be incorrect or whatever for a long time, it's going to be a lot harder to fix, later on down the road. And then on the flip side of that, on the more like positive note, immediate feedback, if you're talking about, praise, right in the moment, I think that is just as important, because if it's gets too far away from the event itself, it's not going to have the same impact on morale and on, the way that the person feels about their performance and their relationship with you. The You doing that as often as you can, I think, and right close to the time that it actually happens, will have a lot more impact.
It's so funny that you say that, because I totally agree. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I think that we formulate these thoughts in our head. I think that there's a lot of, and I know this might sound like a very long way of getting at this point, but I think that as humans, we associate certain feelings, certain emotions with certain exterior stimuli. So for example, you may smell a certain smell that just makes you happy. For me, it's fertilizer, because every time I smell fertilizer, it makes me think of like spring is coming, new things are growing, I'm going outside, I'm going to play sports. For whatever reason, when I smell fertilizer outside, it just makes me happy. We all have those smells. It's or things that we see, or things that we taste, or things that we hear. It makes us think back to maybe a happier or a negative place. It can go both positive and or negative. But the point I'm getting with all of that is, when we give immediate feedback, when we give immediate praise for something that happens, it reinforces that action. It showcases to somebody that they did something really well, and it showcases that they should keep doing that. But if it lets it go too far into the future, it will be difficult to remember the zeal of that feeling in the moment that it happened.
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, I really like that, like the tying it to that, feeling of the specific moment. That's great.
Well, and then the other key component to immediate feedback, especially for habits that need to be fixed or rectified, habits formulate quick. And this is the reason why I think the statistic was like 10 or 15%. This is the reason why only 10 or 15% of like change initiatives are actually fully enacted, is because when you've learn that you have to do your work in a different way, it's really difficult for people to adjust. So if you nip it in the bud right away, it's a lot easier to get people to course correct as opposed to letting it fester for a month or two. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, you can't keep doing it that way. That's not how this works.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think there's, for the employee to learn that they've been doing something wrong for an extended period of time, and no one told them, is not really fair either. So they can, feel personally like, why didn't you tell me that earlier? So it's just better for everybody to catch things early.
Yeah. So let's talk about professional goals and motivations. How important is it for you to understand your direct reports' personal professional goals and then to align them with the business goals?
Yeah, I think that's. I think that's vital to be as successful as you possibly can. Generally speaking, you need, you're going to need to align your departmental goals with the business's general goals and strategy, and so making sure that employees' professional goals align is super important, because it's going to give them more satisfaction, more sense of achievement. They'll feel more engaged in their work if what they're doing is, number one, what they want to be doing, and number two, giving them the experience that they want to get and helping the business all at the same time. I think syncing all those things up is really, really important.
I love that. I think that's cool. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I was reading a book called Building a Story Brand. And one of the things the author talks about is this idea that everybody wants to be the hero in their own story. And so by aligning the professional interests of your direct reports, you're allowing them to be the hero in their own story. But if all of a sudden your business goals are muddied or not very clearly helping that person achieve their professional goals, you're not helping them become the superhero in their own world. They're just kind of there. And that is where we see potentially turnover. That is where we see people being frustrated at work, people not being engaged at work. I think these are all factors that play into it. So I think understanding those professional goals of your direct reports and aligning the business goals, the department's goals with those goals allows them to be the superhero in their own world.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think sometimes it can take some effort to help, line those things up, but it's worthwhile.
I was going to say, so tell me about any of those experiences. Have you ever had difficulty aligning somebody's professional goals that you were working with or that was working with you or for you with the goals of the business?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely times where someone, has worked in a role for a few years, and kind of felt that way, like they, didn't know where the path was, or if there was anything more for them. And I think helping them think about like where their skills are and trying to get them to find out where they want to be, and then showing them what opportunities potentially exist, is pretty important and useful. And sometimes you just need to take some time to redefine for yourself as a manager where opportunities are going to be in the future, and kind of talk those through with the employee.
I like that. I would imagine, though, if you did that, you might not necessarily get your direct report to fully open up to you. I'd imagine that if you were to do that with your direct report, maybe because they're just getting started to get warming up to you, maybe they don't necessarily know, they don't necessarily maybe feel the most comfortable with you. They may not fully open up with their personal aspirations are, which then makes me think about this concept of vulnerability. Have you ever leveraged vulnerability as a manager to help your direct reports open up to you, or just to build a greater level of connection between you and the people you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think vulnerability is one of the easiest ways, and I say that with an asterisk, I guess, but one of the easiest ways to get people to open up to you. Now, it may not be easy for you to be vulnerable yourself, but doing that is honestly one of the best ways to connect with people and explain, to them like your experience and maybe a time where you didn't really know what you were going to do, or you didn't know what your path was going to be, and that, you are where you are now in spite of that, or maybe because of that. But letting people know that you've had similar experiences to them, or that you have your own struggles and fears, I think is a great way to actually connect with people and get them to share with you their thoughts as well.
Yeah, I know earlier in this workshop I was very vulnerable with everybody in our audience. I shared with them the fact that I was a drug dealer and how I got to where I'm at today. And I think that's great what you're saying about vulnerability. And I think what you said was really powerful. Was you as the manager have to be vulnerable first. They expect your people to be vulnerable with you. You have to be willing to be vulnerable with them. And that's why I'm a huge advocate for vulnerability, and I love that you are too. And I think that makes a ton of sense. That you'd say it like that, because I think that your specific line was like, sometimes as managers, it's difficult to be vulnerable with them and see where we're actually vulnerable. But if we're willing to do that, you're much more likely to build a much more connected bond with the people that work with you and work that report to you. And I think there's a lot of power to that. You're going to get a better understanding of where they're coming from and where they like to be, and how you can help position them as the hero in their own story.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that is, I'm not going to say being vulnerable is the only way that you're going to connect with people, but it's like easily one of the most powerful ways.
So, as a boss, how do you ask for feedback? How do you ask for feedback for people that report to you, or do you ever ask for feedback?
Yeah, I think feedback can be in there's a lot of forms. Like it can be either like a weekly one-on-one, asking for feedback. It can be in, survey form, so that it's a little bit more anonymous. I think that can be a pretty good way to get, realistic feedback. I think it's important to build a relationship before you ask for too much feedback. As we were talking about with vulnerability, I think that employees have to trust you first to be able to give you honest feedback. And so I think that you have to show them that you are a reasonable person and will accept constructive criticism in small ways first, before they'll really, be candid with you.
I think that's a really good point. I know I'm guilty of this. I have a very strong personality, and I know that when I meet with my team and I just say something like on the baseline of like, "Hey, I thrive on constructive criticism. Like, please, feel free to share with me." I recognize that statement in of itself can be very intimidating depending on who is actually saying that message. And I don't try to be, but I recognize, as I don't know, just the way I am. I got a very strong personality, and it can be very intimidating. Do you ever watch a TV show, The Office?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a moment where that moment where Ryan, the temp, gets promoted all the way to corporate, and he comes back to Scranton, and he's mad at Jim because Jim was frustrated at using the online website or whatever. And Ryan was like, "Jim, I heard that you were not having a great situation with the online website that we're using. I thrive on constructive criticism. I love that. But this is just a formal warning that you need to be more productive at your job." It's a joke, but essentially it was a perfect example of someone who's not very open to constructive criticism. Just ultimately saying that they're open to constructive criticism, even though their body language, the words that they're using, everything, their tonality is conveying that they're not open to something like that. And so I think, back to the whole point, I think there's probably there's got to be a way to go about gathering that feedback from a direct report, so then it comes off as actually constructive and not hurtful, but at the same time that enacts change.
Yeah, you definitely have to. You can't just say it. You have to mean it. If you don't mean it, you're not doing yourself a service, and you're not doing the employee a service either. So it's important that when you say that, you mean that, and you honestly, kind of have a conversation with yourself about being open to that.
Yeah, I want to talk about one quick thing really cool. I guess one of the final couple points that I have on this topic of being just a better manager is on body language and how we can leverage our body language to be a better manager and communicate, I guess, better, even when we're virtual, because I know we're in a COVID situation. We may not actually be in person, but how does your body language impact how you manage other people and what they perceive from you?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to body language, obviously. I mean, even like if you're in person, like some of the basics, like not crossing your arms while you're talking to someone, or looking them in the eye, can be pretty important. It's definitely different now, obviously, but some of the body language things, honestly, are they're different, but they're just as powerful, I think. If you're talking about, like, we're looking both at a computer screen right now, right? But I can see your face, and I can see if you're reading something else on the side, or I can see if you're looking at your phone, or I can see if you are, smiling and laughing and paying attention. So I think that we have a very tiny window of people's body language right now. So the importance of actually paying attention and active listening is almost more important or amplified than it normally would be.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I think body language. I think, what is the statistic, that 65% of all of our communication is via our body language, and especially now more than ever, when we're virtual, being in a position where it shows like that we are engaged is so critical. So I think that's a really good point that you bring up. Just as a leader, if you are reporting to somebody else, or rather, if someone else is reporting to you, you want to give them the feeling that they've got your undivided attention, that you're fully present when they're chatting with you. Because if you don't give them the feeling that that you're fully present when you're chatting with them, it's difficult to realistically expect that they would be fully present with you when you're trying to convey a really important message.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think because you only have that limited window, right? Like, you can't just hang around their office until you're done talking. Almost every meeting has a hard stop, or at least like an estimated stop at this point. So you got to make each one of those video, at least, interactions count.
Yeah. So one last question, because I think this is on all of our minds in terms of managers. How can we avoid being a micromanager? Have you ever had a micromanager before? How can we avoid being one ourselves when we get into a role?
Yeah, I've had plenty of micromanagers in my day, and it's almost like an experience that you need to go through to really appreciate what it is and what you don't want to be. And I think that kind of what we were talking about earlier, talking about goals and objectives, and I think getting buy-in with your employees on their goals and objectives and tying those to the business's goals and strategy is the best way to avoid micromanagement, because you lay everything out. You get the employees to understand what they should be doing and agree that they should be doing those things, and then as much as you can, just let them do it their own way, as long as they're getting the outcomes that you need. I think that's the major most important way to not micromanage, no matter how much you would prefer it if somebody did something some way. If their results are there, and they are a good part of the team, I think that is the main focus.
I think that's awesome insight right there. I've heard back in the Kim Scott's book, Radical Candor, she talks about this idea of being like ruinously empathetic or so focused on the numbers. Oftentimes we see that happen when you're like so focused on the numbers, you become a micromanager, because what ends up happening is you were, let's say, a great individual contributor. Maybe you were a great salesperson, you hit all your sales numbers, now you're a sales manager. Very different ballgame. So what will happen is, if you are so focused on the numbers, is you will push your team super hard to hit the numbers that you expect of them. But eventually they're going to be burnt out. They're not going to like working with you, because they know that you're insane and you're working at this crazy pace. The other opposite end is ruinous empathy, which is essentially just being super, like, you were a great contributor and now you're a manager, but you don't want anybody to hate you. You want to be the cool manager. You want to be like what I would call like the Michael Scott manager, where you want everyone to think that you're cool and that you're nice, that you're empathetic to any situation that they're facing, and that even if they say they never get their numbers consistently accomplished, you don't ever hold them accountable to that. You don't want to be that either, because you're never going to hit the numbers you want and you're not going to be considered necessarily a great manager. People are just going to like you. So I think that there's a common ground to find there, and ultimately it can be achieved. It's just trying to find that happy balance. And I think micromanaging plays into that, because if we're on one end of the spectrum, it can be easy for us to be a micromanager if we're too empathetic or we're too focused on the numbers, because we're going to want to make sure that the work gets done some way, whether it means I'm constantly breathing down my people's necks to get it done, or I'm trying to find another way to get the work done in a different form or fashion.
Yeah, I agree, and that that balance is it's tough, but you have to practice to get used to it. Also, I mean, a lot of times you are, a lot of times you are going to go too far one way, too empathetic or too far into the weeds. Sometimes you have to, though. I mean, as long as it's only temporary, and overall you balance it out. And you're doing your goals, and keeping people engaged. Sometimes it's okay to go a little one way or the other, as long as overall you're kind of keeping it balanced.
Cool. No, that makes sense. That's awesome. So Aaron, any final parting tips you'd like to leave with our audience about just how they can best transition into a managerial role?
I think the major things are, number one, almost everybody experiences imposter syndrome to some degree. And so just recognizing that sometimes you are going to be out of your element and you're never going to have experienced a certain thing before. And everybody else who is good at being a manager has done that before, has been in a situation where they were very uncomfortable and even failed at it sometimes. And so recognizing that, and knowing that you're going to get through it, no matter how hard it is, I think is a pretty good piece of advice. Just recognizing that nobody's born to be a manager. Really, it's something that you got to practice and get good at.
That's great advice. I think everybody faces imposter syndrome. Some people handle it better than others. Some people handle it in an unhealthy way, where they think that they're very qualified even though they've never done anything before. So I think there's a full spectrum there, but I think you're right. There's a lot of people that don't give themselves enough credit, because the only way for you to have experience as a manager is to be an inexperienced manager first.
Yep, exactly. There's this, it still happens to me sometimes. There's still new situations where I have no idea what to do. So, I think just recognizing that, there's other people that have been there before, and the only way to learn is to get through. So.
That's awesome. Well, Aaron, thanks for being here. This was a great workshop on how to transition into a managerial role. How can our audience connect with you, learn more about you, and just learn about your work?
For sure. I am on LinkedIn. I think I'm the first Aaron Grady. And then check out Bloomerang is a company that I work at. We're a tech company that makes software for nonprofits. And we're on LinkedIn. Our website is bloomerang.co, Bloomerang Tech on Twitter. I think that's all of them.
That's awesome. Aaron, thanks for being here. This was a great workshop. Everybody, thank you all for being here. I'm so excited to see you all for our next workshop. Good luck connecting with your mentor. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Good night.